What is going on, everyone? Happy Sunday. Welcome into the second episode and this week's edition of GC Live Sunday Reset with your host, yours truly, the one, the only, myself, Jack Veltri from Gamecock Central. If you don't know anything about me, I cover Gamecock football, men's basketball, and baseball for GamecockCentral.com. And I was just in Lexington, Kentucky this weekend, covering South Carolina's 31-6 win over the Wildcats yesterday out there in Lexington, and it was a great time. Just got back into town probably about, I want to say maybe like 2 hours ago, and it was a long day of driving, but we're here. We're ready to talk some Gamecock football, but before we get going, hope everyone is doing well, by the way. If you have any questions you want answered or anything you guys want to talk about, we're going to break down this game as much as we can. And we are going to talk a little bit about College Game Day because I think that's really exciting and a good opportunity for South Carolina. But before we get going, I want to talk to you guys real quick about our sponsor of the day, Clint Hammond of CMG Home Loans. If you're in the market for a home or you're looking to get help with your mortgage or anything along those needs, anything that has to do with trying to own a home, Clint is your guy to call or get in touch with. He is a lifelong Gamecock fan, longtime supporter of Gamecock Central, and he's always been very good to us. I know he's helped out our very own Wes Mitchell and former Gamecock quarterback Perry Orth over the years. So definitely give our guy Clint a call at 803-422-6797. It's the number right above my big head here. Again, that number to call is 803-422-6797. You can also go to clinthammond.com, or the NMLS number for him is 71597. So thank you to Clint for sponsoring these shows as usual. CMG Home Loans, Clint Hammond. So yeah, let's get right into it. SC Mike says, "How we doing, sir?" The defense was really impressive. Yeah, I totally agree, man. This defense for South Carolina was phenomenal. And I think that's where we should start. So, in case you missed it, South Carolina was 1-0 going into yesterday, and they come out of Lexington 2-0. I believe at one point they were 10-point underdogs, and Kentucky was favored by a lot. The Wildcats really needed this game just as much as South Carolina did, because you look at what's next for both these teams. South Carolina has a home date with LSU upcoming this weekend, and that game becomes a lot more important now, which we'll get into a little bit later. But for Kentucky, I mean, they get Georgia next week under the lights. So that's a huge game right there for the Wildcats. And the fashion in which South Carolina won this game, I think, surprised most, because you look at last week, South Carolina only won against Old Dominion 23-19. And there were a lot of questions, I think rightfully so in some cases, about the way this team performed defensively. And Rob is right. Defense definitely showed it wasn't a fluke in game one. The defense was outstanding in that first game of the year. And they had 4 turnovers, a bunch of forced fumbles, and recovered a few of them, obviously. And the offense had 14 points off those turnovers. But the problem was, outside of that, the offense was really just not clicking. The run game was pretty good, but the passing attack was just not where it needed to be. And coming into this week, there were many questions about, okay, how is Lenor Sanders going to fare this week throwing the football? And keep in mind, this was his first SEC road start, or just SEC start in general, but it does come on the road in Lexington, good crowd on hand. It's going to be loud, tough environment. How's he going to handle it? And going off that, how are these receivers going to go out there and catch the football? And I think for the most part, things went very well. We'll dive a little bit more into the offense here shortly, but the defense, I think that is, once again, the standout of the day. The Gamecocks held Kentucky to 6 points, all of which came in the first half. And when you look at the numbers, I mean, it was just, I think, honestly, as if last week wasn't good enough, I think you could argue that this week's performance was probably better. I mean, they had 5 sacks. That's pretty good. 11 tackles for loss. I'd wager to say that's also good. They had 2 interceptions, 2 forced fumbles. Oh, yeah, and by the way, Kentucky had 0 passing game. I mean, Brock Vandegrift, who I think it's also important to remember that for Kentucky, they're kind of in a similar situation to South Carolina in a lot of ways. Like, you know, Mark Stoops, Shane Beamer, they got this little rivalry going on with the stupid sunglasses, all that stuff, all that off the field nonsense. But I think these are two evenly matched teams where, okay, whoever wins this game is on the right path to a bowl game. But they're also in similar situations where they have these new quarterbacks coming in. For Kentucky, Vandegrift transferred in from Georgia, and he had never really seen a lot of playing time with Georgia, let alone starting experience. So this was going to be Vandegrift's first start in the SEC. And yeah, it comes at home, but it's against a defense that, like Shane Beamer said, is not what he's ever really seen. Yeah, he's gone up against Georgia's defense in practice and stuff over the years, and he faced Southern Miss's defense last week, but it's not South Carolina's defense. And I think that's a very good point that he makes. And you saw it with the way he really couldn't get anything going in the passing game. Vandegrift finished the day 3 for 10 passing, only for 30 yards. He threw a pick six right as the fourth quarter began to Nicky Minwari, who took it to the house. And I mean, it was an awful day for him. I mean, he only completed 30% of his passes, had a 35.2 quarterback rating. And I mean, it got to the point where, South Carolina's ahead by a good chunk of points. I think they were up maybe like 24-6 when Vandegrift got pulled in the fourth quarter. And they bring the backup in, and even the backup quarterback for Kentucky threw a pick as well. So an awful day throwing the football for the Wildcats. They only threw for 44 yards and 2 interceptions. And they had to rely a lot on the run game. And if this sounds familiar, it sounds just like South Carolina in a way when you go back to the Old Dominion game. I mean, the Gamecocks in that game really were only able to run the football, and the passing game was just not where it needed to be. And this was kind of the same situation for the Wildcats yesterday. I mean, they had to rely heavily on the run game. I mean, at one point, I think it was in the first half. I know they had a drive where it was 11 straight run plays, and it led to a field goal with just over 2 minutes to go in the first half. And then I think overall at one point in that first half, they had ran 17 straight run plays in a row. So you saw early on, there was just no confidence from Stoops or that offensive staff in throwing the football. And you see it reflected in the passing numbers. But on the ground, Kentucky finished with 46 carries for 139 yards. And here's the big number, 0 touchdowns. That's right. Regardless of how Kentucky was running the football. I mean, I think at one point in the first half, South Carolina was really struggling against Kentucky's run game, at least to me. I think there were times where you see the runs coming over and over again, and Kentucky's getting, 4 or 5 yards on most carries, but then you have the few carries that lead to first downs and more yardage. And that was the main issue that South Carolina had. But the media asked, and myself included, I think we were talking to Emanwari and TJ Sanders after the game yesterday. And I think obviously everyone noticed at one point Kentucky was just running the football constantly. So we asked them, at what point in the game did you guys kind of realize that South Carolina or Kentucky was just really going only with the run, and that you guys had taken away the pass? And I think TJ had said, and happy birthday to John, by the way, 35 years old. Hey, you're still young, man. Enjoy it. Hope you've had a great birthday. It comes on a great day with NFL being back in action and stuff. So that's super, man. So happy birthday to you, John. Man, thank you for tuning in and watching on your birthday with me. So getting back to this defense, though, like I said, so when I asked TJ Sanders and Nick that question about, when did they kind of know that they had basically taken Kentucky's passing game out of the picture, they basically said it was right around that point where the Wildcats, like I said before, had been running run play after run play after run play in the second quarter. And that's when they knew, like, okay, we've taken the passing game out of the picture. Now we can really focus in on stopping the run. And that's kind of what they did. I mean, you look at the numbers and you see almost 140 yards on the ground for the Wildcats. But honestly, South Carolina did a really good job of keeping things in check and never really allowing the big explosive plays. Yeah, sure, here and there, Kentucky had some good plays, but in the end, it just wasn't enough because you see the score and it's reflected in the fact that South Carolina won by 25 points. I mean, by the time Kentucky started doing anything offensively, even though it didn't result in any touchdowns, I mean, it was garbage time in the fourth quarter. They were down by 25 points. I mean, it was like South Carolina backups in, all that sort of stuff. So it doesn't really mean all that much. And this was a great performance for this defense. Again, like I said, 5 sacks on the day, 3 of which came in the first quarter. And that is really what set the tone for this game. And SC Mike says Kentucky could not pass protect at all. Yeah, man, it was an awful performance for that offensive line they've got in Kentucky. I mean, you guys want to talk about South Carolina's offensive line being bad? Just look at the way that group performed yesterday. And it's not even just the sacks they were giving up. There were so many penalties that they had in that game. I mean, I think Kentucky, I'm going to look at the numbers here. Pretty sure they had, let's see, where are they at? Yeah, they had 11 penalties for 56 yards. I mean, that's just ridiculous. And they won the time of possession. I mean, they had the ball for 32 minutes of this game, but they couldn't even score a single touchdown. I mean, they only had 2 field goals. So credit where it's due, man. South Carolina's defense stepped up to the task and played a phenomenal game from start to finish. And it was just, again, this is what you want to see from this team, because whether you want to admit it or not, at least in my opinion, if South Carolina is going to win games this year, it's going to be because of the defense. I think the offense, and we'll get to them in here in a second, the offense is still not 100% where it needs to be. And I think we've kind of come to the point where, yeah, it's still early in the season, but I think we're at the point where we can confidently say if South Carolina is going to be good enough this year to make a bowl game and go farther than that, if that is the case, it's going to be because of the defense. If South Carolina can just keep games, like opponents maybe scoring at most 15 to 20 points a game, maybe lower than that. If you have games like this where you're only holding teams to field goals and stuff, you're going to be fine. You're right. Your offense may not have the best day, and we'll get to them, like I said, here in a few, because they didn't have the best day yesterday, but it didn't matter because, for one, they put up 31 points, 24 of which came on offense, but it was also like the defense, they didn't the offense didn't have to be super. They didn't have to be Superman. Lenor Sanders didn't have to play the best game of all time. His defense is good enough to where it's like, okay, if South Carolina scores, let's say 17 to 24 points, somewhere in that ballpark, more times than not, I feel like South Carolina, because of their defense, can win ball games. And Maurice T. Patterson, thank you for checking in, my man. He says, that Stort is special. You're damn right he is. That man is, I don't even want to say, man, he's an 18-year-old kid we're talking about here. Dylanstort. We haven't even gotten to him yet. We haven't really even gotten into the individuals from the game that were phenomenal from start to finish. And with Dylanstort, I mean, he had, I think, arguably one of the bigger plays in the game in the second half. At one point when the Gamecocks had 2 fumbles on the opening possession of the second half on offense, both of which were recovered by the Gamecocks. I thought, like, okay, this is kind of where it's 10-6. This is kind of where Kentucky's going to start waking up, playing a little better, this and that, and maybe the defense will start to give some plays. That just never ended up being the case. And on that next drive, you see on 3rd and long, Dylanstort crash in and get his only sack of the day. And it was a big one because it took Kentucky I think Kentucky was already deep in their own territory, but it forced a punt, and then it led to South Carolina going down and scoring a touchdown the next possession. So that was a big play right there. And again, that kid, he is special. And thank you for the nice comment from Jeffrey Earl. Great channel. Really appreciate it. And Rob says, I'm happy the D is playing solid for 4 quarters this year. Yeah, I mean, this is really refreshing to see that this defense is playing the way it is. I think last year, that month of October, I mean, I was there for all those games. I was there in College Station. I was there when they played Florida. Oh, God, how could you forget that game? I think that was the worst game of the season last year for South Carolina. Those games they had in October where they just couldn't force a turnover at all, that was terrible to watch because it's like South Carolina is like a few plays away from winning these games, especially Florida. If you create a turnover, it's like, okay, you might end up winning this game, but you just never could force any takeaways. And with this year's team, I mean, it's still a little bit early, but like they're playing at a good pace to where it took until the fourth quarter yesterday for them to get those interceptions, but it's like they're still forcing them. They're finding a way to just be in the right spots to make plays. And that goes all back to Clayton White, South Carolina's defensive coordinator, and the position coaches around him, because they are doing a great job with this defense. And I promise we're going to get to all your questions, specifically the ones with offense here shortly once we get into the offense, which we're going to talk about for a little bit. Freddie Taylor says, Kyle Kennard has been huge as well. Big portal pickup. You are absolutely on the money with that. He has been phenomenal for this team. And I think he had the standout performance in the opener against Old Dominion. But I think he was, it wasn't as good number-wise, but I think he still had a really good day to trying to find his numbers here. He was really solid. I mean, he had a sack, tackle for loss. He had a forced fumble and a QB hurry. I mean, it's what you want. This is what you get out of a guy out of the transfer portal that, again, had 6 sacks last year for Georgia Tech. Really good player, and I'm glad to see it's translating over very well because, again, it all goes back to the offseason. This team did a very good job of identifying the issues from last season because, trust me, there were plenty of them, and they went into the portal and got the pieces they needed. So it's very good, I think, from a fan standpoint. I'm sure you guys are very happy to see that this team is reaping the rewards of what they did in the offseason, going out and getting the players. And Trey James said, did Stort get a sack yesterday? Yeah, so he got, in case you missed it, it was 3rd and long it was Kentucky's first possession of the second half. It was 3rd down, and Brock Vandegrift got sacked by Dylanstort to force a punt, and it was a big play. And, yeah, it was a solo sack. And Martin says, hopefully the team does not let the hype get to them. I totally agree, and we're going to get to that with talking about College Game Day here in a little bit. But let's start diving into the offense. But before that, we got one more question here from Tyler, who says, when do we get an Akron kick time? So that should be tomorrow, I believe. So. It's usually, in case you don't know, typically it's so at the start of the season, before the season begins, the first 3 kickoff times for every college football team get revealed. And then every game after that, it's 2 weeks in advance. So tomorrow should be when we get the kickoff time for the Akron game. And I believe it's going to be it's supposed to be a night game. So it's either going to be, I think, like 6 o'clock or 8 o'clock. Somewhere in that time window is when they'll be playing that game, I believe. And, I don't agree with the fact that it should be that's a night game. I think this weekend's matchup against LSU should be a night game. I hate the fact that it's a noon kick, but I get why, because it's not like anyone knew College Game Day was coming to South Carolina this weekend. This was already, the noon kick has already been planned for a while now. So, but with Akron, I'm surprised it's a night game, but it is what it is. All right. We've had enough talking about the defense. They were amazing yesterday. Let's get into the offense, because I think that's a lot more fun to talk about from the fact that I think they were better. And I'll tell you why. So let's start with our first question. Jack, one more question from the defense here. Russell Riley. Jack, what was roughly the total number of sacks the defense had last year? Let's see. 2023 South Carolina. I don't know the number off the top of my head. I know I did a story on it just a little while ago, and I'll have that number here for you in just a second. But let's see. But I know the defense, that was something they talked about a lot, was the fact that they wanted to be better as pass rushers. They needed to create more sacks. And just to be clear, they had 21 total sacks last year. So I don't know what that averages out to, but I can tell you it's not what the pace that they're at right now. But the sacks were something they definitely want to be better at with pass rushing this year, and they certainly have been. But enough of the defense. Let's get into the offense. Russell Riley also comments, Lenor Sanders seems to pass better yesterday when the play had him rolling out of the pocket. Absolutely. He played very well yesterday. And look, some of you guys could say, oh, he needs to be better, or this and that. It wasn't good enough. Look at his stats. But, I mean, look, the stats would tell you, like, he had an okay day. He went 11 of 15 passing for 159 yards, 2 touchdowns with an interception. completed 73% of his passes. And at one point, he was out of the game in the first half for, I think, like 2.5 total drives with what Shane Beamer said on the ABC broadcast was a lower body injury. And then Sellers did come back in the game right before the end of the first half. But I think overall, considering where he was at, offensively speaking, in the passing game just last week, I think this was a substantial improvement for him. He played, you could just tell. Here's the biggest thing that stood out to me from him, just to kind of break it down from my standpoint. Let's go back to Old Dominion. There were a lot of times where, obviously, he ran the ball 22 times. A lot of those were RPOs, design runs, but also times where the pocket would collapse and he's taking off and running. I think the biggest difference from Saturday was the fact that not only did he not take off and run a ton, I mean, you look at his numbers, he only had 7 carries on Saturday, and some of those obviously were straight up runs, but he wasn't panicking in the pocket. He was just a lot better at being more, I guess, situationally aware of the field, being more aware of he's in the pocket and he's reading the defense and he's seeing what's open downfield. I mean, there were a lot of times where he found open receivers and Freddie Taylor brings it up. Was this the breakout game for Mateo Bennett to really start to turn it up? I believe so. He found Mateo Bennett on multiple open passes, and I think it's mainly because Kentucky had some busted coverages on defense where their defense left Bennett open for wide gains. And it was on the first quarter, the opening touchdown of the game that got the scoring going. It was deep in Kentucky territory. I think it was like first down. And Sellers drops back. He's rolling out to the left. I think he had a tight end right in front of him, but he was kind of the tight end was kind of covered a little bit. And it got to the point where it's like, okay, what else does he have? Like, where can he throw this ball? Because if it's not going to go to the tight end right in front of him, where's it going to go? Fortunately, he kept his eyes downfield and he saw Bennett wide open right near the end zone. And it was a 24-yard touchdown pass that got the momentum going for the offense and the passing game in general. And then later on in the game, the big drive for the offense to start the second half was right after Dylanstort got the sack. It was the long drive that included, I think at midfield, South Carolina was going to go for it on 4th and 1, but instead of running a play, they wisely decided to try to get Kentucky to jump off sides, which of course they did, and that resulted in a first down. And then a few plays later, Sellers throws a nice ball to Bennett, who once again was left wide open, this time for a 32-yard gain. And then a few plays later, I think it was the play after, actually, Sellers throws a nice ball right over the middle to Josh Simon for a 16-yard touchdown. So I do think this was the breakout game for maybe not Lenor Sanders yet. It was a good game for him. But I think for Mateo Bennett, I think this is the game that really has solidified himself as one of those guys in the receiving corps that's going to stand out this year. And Shane Beamer did say during the teleconference tonight that going forward, at least for right now, Jared Brown, who had 4 catches for 50 yards on Saturday, no touchdowns or anything, but had a nice game after the big drop last week against Old Dominion. Him and Mateo Bennett should, for right now, be those guys that are the top 2 in the wide receiver room moving forward. And that's because they're just standing out right now. I mean, they were the only receivers to make any catches yesterday. And Bennett had 63 yards as a pass catcher on 3 catches with a touchdown. And like I said, the long of 32. Very impressive day for him. He had 4 targets, but like I said, had 3 catches. So good performance for him. And Lenor Sanders played very well for what it's worth. And Rob is totally right. I think you're talking about Sellers here. Sorry, I'm still getting around to all these comments as they come in. And I appreciate all you guys tuning in. Rob says he definitely stepped it up. I'm assuming you're talking about Lenor here. I definitely agree. SC Mike says the offense showed improvement, but still needs to continue to get better. Sellers seemed to settle down the second half. And you're right on the money with that, because you look at the opening drive of the second half that I talked about before. Sellers had 2 balls that were fumbled, and that's just because it's not all on the offensive line, by the way. That's what Shane Beamer said, so I'm agreeing with him on that. And keep in mind, I haven't been able to go back and rewatch the game, which I plan on doing sometime before this week with LSU coming up. I've been driving all day, so just getting back, wrote a story, teleconference, all that fun stuff. And then I'm getting on here with you guys, which I love doing, of course. But I will get to try to rewatch this game and see a little bit more of what I saw at first glance, but with more of a clear vision from a TV angle, which I think could definitely help. But you're right. I mean, once the second half kind of got going, I think that's when Sellers really did settle in. And like I said before, the 2 fumbles to start off the second half. And then after that, the drive where South Carolina scores on the 16-yard touchdown catch by Josh Simon, a lot of big throws were made by Lenor. And that was because he was reading the field very well and hitting his targets. I mean, I think he still had a few high throws here and there, but then again, only 4 incompletions. So for only 15 passes, you'd like to see him throw the ball a little bit more. But for what you're getting from him on offense and the amount of points they put up, that's enough to win a football game, especially with this defense. And Tommy Lucas says, do you think Sellers' goggles are affecting his peripheral vision? I don't know. I think the fact that he has them on, it's pretty good, right? I mean, so for me, I know I don't have glasses on right now. I need to go out and actually buy a pair because I got a new prescription like a few weeks ago and haven't been able to go out yet and get new glasses. But I definitely do think, at least from my perspective, someone that has never worn contacts, only worn glasses, I think having goggles like that, like as a kid, I played with goggles on too. So I think the goggles are definitely helping him. If they're I doubt they're affecting his peripheral vision. Everyone's different though, so I can't be 100% certain on that. So I will say I don't think it's really impacting him because it all comes down to the fact that he did read the field very well yesterday, much better than he did last Saturday. It just came down to the fact that his first instinct wasn't to run for his life when the pocket collapsed. Instead, he stood back, stood strong, made the plays, and he took the hits when he needed to. So I think that's really what it comes down to, and just being a little bit more accurate. So, and I appreciate this nice comment here from Martin saying, I have become your favorite media member. I appreciate it. That is awesome. Glad you're tuning in, man. And Russell Riley follows that up saying, thanks for the live stream after driving and working today. Yeah, of course. This is what I do it for. Love hopping on here, talking some ball with you guys and sharing my opinions. And it's been a lot of fun doing this show so far. But yeah, getting a little bit back to the offense, Trey James says the game yesterday could have given Lenor the confidence boost he needed. That could bode well for next week back at home. You're totally right. LSU is going to be tough, and we'll dive into them a little bit today. Not fully because, we're still talking about Kentucky. We'll move into LSU once the week begins, and you can check me out on Wednesday with Kendall Smith for the next time I'm on GC Live, and then we'll be talking a lot more about preparation for LSU right after we talk about Kentucky for the last time. But this game definitely was the boost that Sellers and just the offense in general needed. I think another thing that we tend to forget about, or not really, because it was a main talking point, I guess, but the receiving game. I mean, it was because of Sellers' struggles last week. It wasn't all on him. It also was the fact that his receivers just, quite frankly, weren't doing a good enough job of getting open and making plays. And this week, 12 catches, 166 yards, 2 touchdowns. Like I said, Simon and Bennett had the touchdowns. Michael Smith, freshman tight end, had 3 catches for 44 yards with a long of 36, averaging 14.7 yards per catch. So he had 3 targets, 3 catches. Very good day for him. And I think what we saw out of the receivers and tight ends yesterday is a lot more akin to what I think we could see moving forward from this offense. And if they get it going in the run game, but along with the short passing game, that is where I think South Carolina is going to be at its best, because you saw Old Dominion take away South Carolina's ability to be good in the short passing game last week, and it resulted in the struggles that you did see. A lot of those throws Sellers made were deeper balls that just weren't on target sometimes, or maybe the receivers just weren't in the right position to catch the ball. This week, it's a lot more of short passing, reading the field better, like I said, and it just looked a lot more smooth in the passing game. And kind of going on the same direction here with the offense, Freddie Taylor has a long comment, which I'll read real quick. He says, I think we have to get Rocket Sanders more involved in the run game, but we have to get push up front to open up holes. If that happens, that will open up the passing game more. If we really focus and emphasize this South Carolina team can beat everyone left on the schedule, but I want us to take one game at a time. Great approach, great comment. And let's talk a little bit about the run game because unlike last week, the run game was, for what it's worth, it was fine. I don't think it was not as good as last week, obviously. But you ran the ball 34 times for 86 yards and a touchdown, and Rocket on the ground, 13 carries, 54 yards with a touchdown. He had a long of 21, and he averaged 4.2 yards per carry. So it wasn't the best day for him. Then again, he made plays when it mattered most. I think late in that second half, he had what should have been like a 20-something yard touchdown run on 3rd and 1. It was a run to the outside with the defense playing in, and he cut to the outside, beat a few defenders, and he dove towards the pylon. He got pushed out of bounds right at the one. I thought it should have been a touchdown. I'm sure a lot of you thought it should have been a touchdown as well. But I think for what it's worth, I think he played good enough to where it's like, yeah, you'd want him to be better in the run game, but with 13 carries, this was pretty good for his performance. It can be better, but it wasn't bad. So I think that's the positive you could take away from it. Obviously, you want to get others involved in the run game, like Juju McDowell only had 3 yards. Oscar Attaway had -1 yards on the ground on 1 carry. Sellers didn't really even do much in the run game, and it was actually Robbie Ashford who, when he came in for Sellers for those few drives in the second quarter, six carries for 26 yards with a long of 18, and he played very well in the spare time he was in there for on offense. But again, the run game, it needs to be better. You'd like it to be over 100 yards, ideally, because as Shane Beamer constantly reminds us about, is the fact that when South Carolina does rush for more than 100 yards, they typically end up winning those games more times than not. And so I think if you do what you did in the passing game this week with a little bit more from the run game, it does come down to the fact that South Carolina, while the blocking was a little bit better, in my opinion, yesterday up front, I don't think as many holes were created. You allowed less sacks on the offensive line. And sure, there were some glaring issues with the fact that Casey Henry I don't think he had a good game yesterday. Beamer did let it be known during the teleconference that Torselli Simpkins at one of those guard spots played very well yesterday, had a really good game. He was one of the captains of the game yesterday and was one of the offensive players of the game as well, named by Beamer in the teleconference earlier tonight. And I mean, the offensive line, you'd like it to be better, but for what it's worth right now, I think it's doing the job because South Carolina is off to a 2-0 start. So it's easier to fix all these issues with the fact that they haven't lost a game yet. Now, when if they lose a game this year and it's just a bad performance all around, then it's like, okay, you can kind of hit the panic button a little bit more if the offensive line isn't playing well. But for right now, I mean, they're finding ways to win games. And in that time, I think it's a lot easier to pick out the problems and not be so overwhelmed with what's going on. So getting into some more comments here from Ghostasm, who says, our offense really only had 252 yards and was 3 of 10 on third downs. Our defense was that dominant. Offense showed improvement, but still has lots of more room for improvement. Yeah, totally agree with you. It really wasn't the best day for the offense. I mean, I'm saying, like, what I'm trying to say here is I think the offense played good enough to win that football game on Saturday, but it could be so much better, I think. Like, I think they really are. They do have a lot of room for improvement. And it's a good thing because it's like, hey, like I said before, you're 2-0, you haven't lost yet, and your defense is doing more than enough to step it up and win games by itself. But the fact that there is still room for improvement, and we saw the offense get slightly better yesterday, I mean, there's no telling how good they could be if this offense finds its best self. Like if they are able to rush for a ton of yards and throw the ball a little bit better than they did yesterday and limit the turnovers, which again, they didn't have any. Oh, they did have one turnover because it was the Lenor interception in the first half. But I mean, they fumbled the ball a few times and recovered each time. So if you're a little more careful with the ball too, it's going to be very good for what this offense can do moving forward. Jay Diz says, let Dowell come up with the game plan and let Mike Shula call the plays on game day. I don't know. I could see it. I think it just, I don't know. I mean, Dowell Loggins' game plan was better yesterday, I think. I think the execution was better. We're going to hear from him on Wednesday, so I think we'll get a lot more of an assessment on how he thinks the game went, and I'll be interested to talk about that right afterwards with Kendall on GC Live on Wednesday. But I think it was a fine game plan yesterday. I was critical about it last week with how the game plan looked. It was a lot better this time around, in my opinion, and that's why you saw the results improve. We got some questions about Nick Harbor, and I'm glad this is getting brought up because Beamer did get a question tonight on the teleconference because I'm sure it gets brought up almost every presser that we speak to Beamer in is Nick Harbor in some way or another because people just want to see him get the ball. Martin says Nick Harbor drew a pass interference and had a tackle on special teams. That's a positive, at least. Yeah, I think that is good to see that he's making some plays. Well, yeah, making some plays. I know it's not really at receiver, catching, 50-yard touchdown bombs and all that. And like William Jones says here, Nick Harbor jet sweep. Yeah, it's tough because he's not doing really much of anything in the pass catching game. And I think that kind of just speaks to, while we don't know what goes on in practice right now, unless, obviously we hear stuff, but we don't get to see it with our own eyes because, there's no open practices right now. It's tough to know whether or not how good Nick Harbor really is right now as a pass catcher. And I think the fact that he's not getting the ball much at all should speak to the fact that he's still got a lot of work to do as a pass catcher, even though he put in a lot of work over the summer and stuff with jug machines and stuff. He probably, it just seems like he's not there yet from that standpoint. And it's easy to say, yeah, Nick Harbor jet sweep, 99 speed on college football 25. I know firsthand how good he is on that game, but again, it's just a video game, and you have to have the right technique and fundamentals to be able to make plays. You can be 99 speed all you want, but you can be the fastest guy on the field, but it doesn't make a difference if you're not a good pass catcher, blocker, whatever the case might be. And on the teleconference tonight, I'll read off what I wrote down from what Beamer did say. He said South Carolina's got a lot of good receivers. They're still trying to figure out who's going to separate themselves in that room. And again, he did later on say that Mateo Bennett and Jared Brown have really been the guys to step up as the top two in that receiving room, obviously based on the way that they were the only receivers to catch passes yesterday from Lenor Sanders. He understands that everyone wants Nick to get in and make plays, this and that. But they're at the same time, they also have, 8, 9, 10 other guys in that room that they're trying to get involved and get them going in that room because this is a by committee product. This isn't Xavier Leggett and everyone else like last year. There's no receiver in that room right now that is as good as Leggett. And that's just my opinion. And obviously everyone else should hopefully agree with me on that none of these receivers are as good as XL. But at the same time, Beamer does know that they'll all continue to get better. And he understands why people want Nick getting involved, but it's not as simple as, go throw a 50-yard bomb on a go route, and Harbor will catch it. It's tough, and there's defenses in front of these guys, and DBs are good. And let's not forget, I keep bringing this point up from talking about Nick Harbor for so long now. He's a 5-star athlete coming out of high school, not a 5-star wide receiver. Played defense in high school, a little bit of offense. What didn't come out of high school as a wide receiver for this team. So that was a whole thing of putting him on offense and letting him develop over time. And it's going to take some more time, I think. Will it work out this year with him at receiver? I don't know. It's tough to say because so far it just hasn't been that way for Harbor. You hope eventually you get him involved in the passing game. And I know Beamer said last week they're going to scheme up stuff for him and trying to figure out ways to get him involved, but it's easier said than done. I mean, you can talk all you want about wanting Nick to make 5 catches a game like he did last year against Texas A&M and lead the team in receiving every week because he's the biggest guy on the field and he has the best speed and stuff. It's not that simple. Like it's truly not, because again, he has tools, but does he have all the tools, the right tools besides speed and height to be a great receiver? That remains to be seen. Another comment here: Harbor played defensive end / tight end in high school. Would he not be a mismatch at tight end? Again, I think he could be, but it also comes down to the fact, okay, what does he look like as a blocker? How is he? Again, it's not just pass catching that you have to worry about as a tight end. You have to be able to block as well. So there's a lot of things that with Nick, it's like, it's not just speed and height and all that. You have to be good in other aspects of the game. So I'm going to move on from talking about Nick Harbor here, because again, there's not really much to talk about besides him making a nice tackle on special teams and getting a pass interference or drawing a pass interference. He didn't make any catches yesterday. And, I know everyone loves Nick Harbor and stuff, but you love to see him make more plays, but it's just not happening right now. And, there's other guys to talk about. So Martin brings up a point. LSU is going to score, so Gamecocks need to run the ball to set up the pass, which he later goes on to correct. Yeah, totally agree with you, man. I think this offense that LSU's got, I think Garrett Nussmeier is a pretty good quarterback in my opinion. I haven't really watched much of LSU so far this year, just because Labor Day was busy, and then we were covering the game yesterday, so didn't really get a chance to watch much of LSU. But from what I see in stats and stuff, Nussmeier seems to be a pretty good quarterback and stuff. But I think Willie B at noon. I know at noon is not ideal because night game. I don't think LSU would win in that environment, but at noon, you might catch him sleeping a little bit, and South Carolina's going to hopefully be hyped up, coming off game day and stuff and coming off this win. So you just hope that they're ready to play, especially on defense. So we'll see what happens. Excuse me. So, all right, getting into some more comments here. William Jones says, all we heard about was Kentucky's defense and great QB play. Yeah, honestly, man, it's like all we heard about throughout the week. Like, I couldn't tell you how many times I heard the fact that, Kentucky's defense is this and that, and they're so good, and Deion Walker this, Deion Walker that. This Kentucky defense, it has 10 starters returning. Like, I heard just about everything. And, Brock Vandagriff came from Georgia. He's a great quarterback. They beat Southern Miss 31-0. But like Shane Beamer said, and this is a great point, they haven't faced a defense like South Carolina's yet. And you saw that yesterday with how poorly Brock Vandagriff played. I haven't seen, at least in my time covering this team, I haven't seen an opposing quarterback play that bad. Like, I'm going to be honest, there were just no points in that game where I thought, oh, man, this Vandagriff dude, he made a great pass. Like, you got to watch out for this dude. Not to knock on him or anything or disrespect him, but, I mean, it's just like he didn't do anything that wowed me. And you see this Kentucky defense. I mean, South Carolina offensively didn't play amazing. I mean, Kentucky did an okay job of holding them, but like when it mattered most in the second half, I mean, Kentucky's defense folded. I'll just call it for what it is. Like, I think South Carolina just is hands down better than this team. And that's why, which I forgot, I haven't even talked about this yet. Everyone talks about the fact that, nobody picked South Carolina to win this game and stuff, but you guys might forget. And I'm sure you guys, if you read staff picks, you'll know your boy picked South Carolina to win. And I backed it up on talking to 107.5 the game right before heading into the stadium yesterday. I gave my prediction. I said South Carolina would win 19-17. Now, of course, they didn't win 19-17. They won by a lot more. But the fact that, a lot of people aren't picking South Carolina, I have them going 8-4 this year, as it's known by now. I have them starting out 2-0 to start the season. And if you've read deep into my predictions, you'll know that I did pick South Carolina to lose versus LSU. Will that change when I do staff picks later this week? Perhaps, but we're gonna have to see what happens. But again, I'm glad I was right because 6-3, dude. I hope so. I do hope that I was good in staff picks this week. I know. Let's see. I know I picked Arizona State correctly, but yeah, I definitely do have some work to do. As you say, Mike Uva was 7-2. Yeah, I get reminded all the time of Mike having better picks than everyone and being the best staff picker of the bunch. I do have some work to do, but my research is just let's look at the point spread and let's look at how these teams look right now and who they've played and stuff. I don't do a ton of research with it. I just pick who I think it is because after all, it is for fun. So let's get into a few more comments that we have here. Jay Diz says, did Beamer give an update on Sellers' hip? Yeah, it was a lower body injury that Beamer talked about during the broadcast and then after the game. Everything seemed fine from what Beamer did say. And again, Sellers talked about it to us afterwards. He felt fine coming back out there, and obviously he played very well. And we got a few more comments here to get to, and then we'll dive a little bit into special teams because we need to talk about Kai Kroger, y'all. He had a great game. Tod Gwyn says, I was predicting 23-21 Gamecocks. Didn't expect a 25-point win. Great weekend. Honestly, man, neither did I. We both predicted South Carolina to win this game. I don't think anyone, you guys can share your comments if you think otherwise, and you're probably lying, honestly, if you think South Carolina was going to win by 25. But, truthfully, did any of y'all expect this team to win by that much, considering how, put it bluntly, I don't want to say poorly because they didn't play. They played well enough to win against Old Dominion, but it wasn't a great performance. So the fact that they went out there yesterday and won by as much as they did shocked me. And I knew I had them winning, but I thought it was gonna be closer. I don't know what happened, man. Kentucky just they were not impressive. And Hutch's vlog says what helps is that we play at home against LSU. But if it was a night game, I would love it. I totally agree. If it was a night game, hands down, South Carolina would win this game. But again, it's a little. I don't want to say it's up in the air because I don't even know how it's going to go. But just from, I don't want to speak too early on anything. But I do feel like you'd feel like 100% confident South Carolina would win this game because it's at night, but it's at noon. So who knows what could happen. And my last section I want to talk about with yesterday's game before we dive a little bit into next week, or I should say this week with LSU, is special teams. With the special teams specifically, a lot has been made about Kai Kroger's season last year, right? I think everyone was fully on board with him winning, the Ray Guy Award back in 2022 when he had those game after game electric performances that was capped off with a historic performance, one that will go down in the record books and the memories of many Gamecock fans, was his performance against Clemson to end the year where he was just bombing kick after kick and really was a big reason why South Carolina ended up beating the Tigers 31-30 that year back in 2022. You go back to last year, it's not like he had a bad season, but comparatively, his numbers just weren't as good. And that's kind of to be expected just because he did so much good. He set the bar so high in 2022 that whatever he did in 2023, 90% it probably wasn't going to be as good as what he did before. But yesterday, it's still early in the year and things could change. But from what I saw based on yesterday's game alone, that was a vintage Kai Kroger performance. He had 5 punts yesterday for an average of 51.6 yards per punt with a long of 58. 4 of his punts went over 50 yards, and he had 1 punt land inside the 20. Without his efforts yesterday, I think South Carolina still wins this game because obviously the defense is electric right now. But Kentucky's offense did little to nothing yesterday, not just because of the defense and stuff, but the fact that Kroger was pinning them back and making it tough. And making it harder for Kentucky to really get much going. And once his punts, got in the air and landed, the defense was able to go out there and execute and basically finish what he started with putting Kentucky in bad field position. But without him, South Carolina does not win that game by as much as they did, and it's a very good sign to see that he performed very well yesterday. And Hutch brings up another point. I like Alex Herrera. He looks good. He looks like a good kicker. Yeah, did y'all see? I haven't. Again, so I'll bring up the Notre Dame game real quick because I think you guys, if you know about Notre Dame, you know where I'm heading with this. Not the fact that Northern Illinois embarrassed them. I know they only won by 2 points, but that's an embarrassing loss for the Irish, being number 5 in the country and losing to a MAC school. I believe they're a MAC school. Mitch Jeter, I believe. I think I saw the highlight. What do you have? A 62-yard field goal that got blocked. That's that's not all on Mitch because he was a great kicker here at South Carolina. But Alex Herrera, I think a lot of people questioned the kicking competition because, from what we heard from Beamer during fall camp, it seemed like that was a spot at kicker that was an issue for South Carolina. And so far, it's been really good. Herrera went 3 of 4 last week, kicking field goals, and he only missed from 48. And then yesterday, he only had 1 field goal, and it was it was from 29 yards out, and he made all his extra points. He's been very good so far. So you hope, knock on wood, he continues to perform well. But I think so far the expectations for him, I think, were low. But again, it's hard to do what Parker White and Jeter did over the last few years. And you can even go back as far as Elliott Fry as well, because South Carolina's always had really good kickers. And Herrera's been here for a while, but he's never really gotten his opportunity until this year. And he has done well so far, so you really can't complain. And Jadiz says Kroger looked like his old self punting. I totally agree. And Tod Gwyn says Northern Illinois ranked 25th in the AP poll today. You're right. I did see that while driving on the road, and they deserve it. They deserve to be in the rankings. And after beating a team like Notre Dame in South Bend, mind you, there were a lot of great games yesterday that I hate that I wasn't able to watch because with the 3:30 kick time and being on the road and stuff and working, I didn't get out of the press box yesterday till like 9:30. So you might think it's a 3-hour game and then I'm out of there. No, it's a ton of work that goes into the entire day. I get there. I probably got to the stadium around like 12 yesterday, and then it was all work from 12 to 9:30. So it's a long day, and I'm not complaining about it, but it's I hate the fact that I haven't been able to really watch as much college football as maybe I would have liked. And we have a question here from Todd who says, is he a sophomore? Is this, Todd, let me know. Is this a question in reference to Herrera, Mitch Jeter? Who's this in reference to? Because Herrera is a 6th-year senior. Kai Kroger, he should be in his, he's a 5th year. Yeah, that's right. So, so Kai Kroger's in his 5th year, and Alex Herrera's in his 6th year. So if that's what the question is in reference to, just let me know. But hope I answered it for you. William Jones says, Jack, do you think Dow will open up the playbook a little bit more? How much more can he really open it? Here's the thing, and I thought this way after the first game too. I was like, you know what? South Carolina's offense looked pretty bad last weekend against Old Dominion. And a lot of that had to do with maybe the fact that Dow Loggins was just saving plays for the next game. Bigger opponent. I don't think so. Now thinking about it a little bit more, it's like you're at one point trailing against Old Dominion in the 4th quarter. It's like, do you really hold back your best punches when you have to win a football game? Like if you lose to Old Dominion, think about how much worse things are right now. No college game day, none of that. The vibes are low. Maybe you lose to Kentucky. Who knows? But I do think after kind of watching these 2 games, I think the playbook can be opened up more with the passing game because I think there's a lot left out there. I don't think it's as much as like Dow's saving plays or anything. I think it's more of like the players just need, and the coaches just need to get more out of the plays that they're running. I think if that makes sense. I think that's kind of how I feel about it. At least I don't think he's really holding back a ton of plays right now because, again, you play to win the game. And it's not like you're not looking ahead to LSU when you're playing Kentucky. You're focused in on Kentucky and doing whatever it takes to beat them. So I think hopefully that should answer your question. Hutch says, Jack, I think this is true. And the question is, if we win against LSU, would we be in the AP top 25? I believe today I was riding home, and obviously I'm driving, so I'm really not looking at my phone much since I'm a responsible driver for the most part, which is a good thing. But in all seriousness, I think I was asking one of the interns who came with us to the game, covering with me, Griffin Goodwin. I was asking him, like, how many votes did South Carolina get? Because I didn't expect them to be in the AP top 25 this week. But I thought, like, okay, they probably should get some votes. And I think they got 10 votes this week. So if they beat LSU is ranked 16th now. So they moved up 2 spots, despite struggling a little bit against Nicholls State. But I think if South Carolina does beat LSU, granted it's at home, I don't think they'd win in Death Valley. Let's be honest. That place is insanely tough to play. But I think if they do beat LSU, I don't know if I'd rank them in the top 25. If I were an AP voter, which I'm not, would love to be. That'd be cool. But I think that'd be a tough job, honestly, because you have a lot of pressure on you to get it right with the rankings for 25 teams. But I'll never say no to that. But ranking them in the top 25, it'd be tough. If they go 4-0 by the end of September, like if they beat LSU and then they beat Akron, I think you rank them then. Because the only way from here is up if you keep winning games. And more votes will definitely pour in next week. If they blow out LSU this weekend, I would say it's going to be a close call. I think they'll be like the first team on the outside looking in then, if that were the case. But we'll have to see. And Todd says we're like 35th. Yeah, probably right around that range. They're not top 25 yet. And I don't think a win against Kentucky, no matter how well they played yesterday, was going to put them in there just because Kentucky's not ranked. So that's also important to keep in mind. But if you beat LSU, who knows? And last comment here before we get into a little bit of this upcoming week. Jay Diz says, Dowell got to stop running up the middle for no gain on first down. He did that 10 times yesterday. Yeah, I don't fully disagree with you. I think it's fine that they're running the football, and I think running it to the outside is a little better. But again, in football, this is always what I've been taught from playing high school ball back in the day. You want to go north-south with your runs. East and west is fine too, I guess. But you want to go straight. And I understand running the ball up the middle, but you got to be able to block up front and create holes. And that's kind of where we saw South Carolina run the ball up the gut a bunch of times last week. They got big gains because their offensive line blocked really well. I'm not saying the offensive line didn't block it all yesterday. That's not the case. But not as many holes, I guess, were opening up for the running backs. And Todd agrees, and so do I. And I agree with this statement. Rankings don't mean anything. Not really. Like, it's cool and all. It's just a number, especially this early in the season. It's like, how can you even rank teams right now? It's like you're ranking them based off of their notoriety, how they did in recruiting, and just their pop. It's a popularity contest. It's a popularity contest right now. So I'm stumbling on my words. And I think that's kind of true. It's like these rankings it's whatever right now. Like if South Carolina gets ranked, it's kind of like men's basketball. If they rank us, they rank us. If they don't, they'll pay the price. I think that's how the statement goes. But and then Justin Summers said, but Nebraska hasn't played anyone ranked. Did they get ranked? Let me look at the AP top 25. By the way, I was so happy to see Nebraska slaughter. And I know it was an 18-point win, but at least to me, like Colorado looked awful yesterday. Yeah, Nebraska's ranked 23rd. Good for them. I'm happy to see Matt Rule having a good run so far this year at Nebraska. And I know we got a question here that I'll get to real quick. Notre Dame is ranked 18th, so they dropped back a ton. But yeah, Nebraska, Dion, Colorado. I picked Nebraska to beat Colorado in staff picks for a second on whatever day I was doing. I think it was Thursday night. I was like, you know what? Colorado's offense is pretty good. but their defense sucks. I mean, I don't know. And Nebraska, there are a lot of questions about them too. These are two teams that, like, whoever won this game in Lincoln yesterday, I don't want to say that they're like back, but it's like a big rivalry win to where it's like you take them a little bit more serious this season. But again, Nebraska just outplayed them, and it was like 28-3 at one point. I caught the tail end of it, unfortunately. I was listening a little bit on the radio, so I do know Lenor Sanders left the field early and stuff, and maybe it was because of injury, maybe it was just because bad sportsmanship. I don't know. Wouldn't surprise me if it was that, and who knows. And Tony says, I prefer not to be ranked. Yeah, I mean, hey, it's probably better that way, right? I mean, it's if like Jade says, the polls hate us. If we start 5-0, then lose at Bama, they would drop us out. You're probably not wrong, to be honest. I think if they beat Ole Miss and they start 5-0, they're definitely going to be in like the top 15. I mean, unless they got like massacre, like 63-0 or something, they drop out of the rankings. But like other than that, if it's a close loss to Bama, it's like, okay, like you probably drop to like 20 something. But Lance says, I'm sorry, but you go out and beat LSU on national TV with game day in town and you win popularity contest for that week. I mean, yeah, that's what I'm saying. I'm not saying like if South Carolina, like what I'm trying to get at here is the popularity contest I referred to is more so like the AP poll rankings at the beginning of the year. Because it's like you have nothing really to go off of other than what these teams did last year. That's why I think teams should start ranking teams. I think the college football playoff is when teams should really start getting ranked, because that's when you can really judge a team. But if the AP poll has to be included for the future, it's like maybe like week 5, week 6, once October begins and conference play begins, it's like, okay, start ranking teams for sure from scratch and pick the best teams. Because right now it's like, I'm not saying like some of these, like Michigan, for instance. What were they ranked like top 10 yesterday? They fell all the way to 17. So they dropped 7 spots. And they lost 31-12 against Texas. Like I saw a little bit of that game, but like Michigan is not what they were last year at all. Like not even close. And that is because Jim Harbaugh's not there. Half their roster was drafted. So obviously they're going to take a step back. And I'm not saying that Michigan's going to be bad this year, but it's not going to be last year by any means. And Todd brings up a great point that I think you all should already be doing. I'm only seeing 9 likes so far. If you're not a Gamecock fan, hit the thumbs up. Yes, I totally agree. Go hit the thumbs up on this video. That just means to me, you guys are enjoying this content. I mean, obviously the comments show that you guys are engaged with this an hour in. I was only planning on going an hour, but I'm going to go a little further because we still got to talk game day. I appreciate all you guys tuning in and, giving me a lot of stuff to talk about here, because these comments, they're good, and I enjoy answering as many questions as I can. And before we get into game day, I promise we're talking game day now. Jay says, seems like we're due to finally beat LSU, kind of like finally beating Texas A&M in 2022. I totally agree. It is, it's very, very true. And actually, Todd brings up a good point for me. If you are a Gamecock fan, hit the thumbs up. Yeah, if you are a Gamecock fan, hit that thumbs up. I see some of you guys are already doing it. So, please hit the thumbs up button. And Todd, I appreciate you kind of correcting your comment there. And fun fact, we haven't beaten LSU since the 90s. Streaks are meant to be broken. Heck yeah, they are. And let's get into game day talk. How cool is it that 2 weeks, it's not 2 weeks ago yet, but how cool is it that South Carolina went from almost losing to Old Dominion to hosting College Game Day in the span of 2 weeks? That's insane. And at the same time, a lot of people are just happy with the fact that South Carolina beat Kentucky yesterday. Let's also not forget, and I think this would have happened had Kentucky won, South Carolina single-handedly stole a College Game Day appearance, basically stole College Game Day from coming to Lexington next week. Because if Kentucky won that game, there's not a lot of great games next week. I thought Bama, Wisconsin's a good game. You could argue Boston College, Missouri's another good game where game day maybe should go. But had Kentucky won that game, Georgia, Kentucky would have been game day next week. That's just my opinion. I'm sure it would have been the case. But South Carolina single-handedly, it's like the Grinch stealing Christmas. I mean, it's South Carolina is the Grinch right here, and went in and bullied Kentucky and managed to not only beat Mark Stoops and keep him quiet, but also stole College Game Day from coming to Lexington in the process. So game day next week or this week. It's not going to be at the Horseshoe like I think 10 years ago was the last time it came to Columbia. It will not be at the Horseshoe. It will be at Gamecock Park. As more information comes out, we on Gamecock Central will go ahead and provide as many updates as we can about that. But what we can say from what we know right now is the show will be from 9 a.m. to noon and will be broadcasted on ESPN for those of you who cannot be there. And South Carolina versus LSU will be the game of the week that follows at noon on ABC right afterwards at Williams-Brice Stadium. So if you are there, though, in Columbia, if you're a student watching this, if you're a subscriber, whoever you are, if you're in Columbia or you're coming to the game, College Game Day will be taking place at Gamecock Park, which I'm not sure what side. I can't remember, like, if it's the east side, the west side, whatever side of the stadium Gamecock Park is, that's where the show will be taking place. So it's very exciting. It's a really good time for South Carolina right now because it's like I said, it was week one, about a week and a half ago, where South Carolina narrowly escaped losing to Old Dominion, and now they're hosting College Game Day, and all the eyes of college football are going to be on not just this game, but South Carolina in general, because Game Day is going to be spotlighting this university, and it's going to be super awesome. And Todd says West Side, I think. Thank you very much. Look, I've been to Game Day in the past, and I was told by a buddy yesterday. I was telling my friend yesterday that I went to College Game Day when it was in Charlotte for the first time, and I think it was like 2017. I was like a senior in high school, and Game Day was in Charlotte at the ACC Championship for Miami Clemson, and that was. Let's see if I can pull up the sign I had real quick. I have it in my Snapchat memories. It's so funny. It has something to do with Dabo, I think, because I think that was funny. But that's the only time I've been to Game Day. So for those of you who haven't been, it is super cool, super awesome to go to. So if you have the chance to go on Saturday, I'm trying to find this picture I have from Game Day. So from when I went. So apologies, looking down real quick, but. Todd brings up a great comment. Sure can help with recruiting. Totally agree with you. It is massive that it will help. It's gonna help with recruiting. I actually just wrote a story, so I think it should be published right now. But if you go to GamecockCentral.com right now, after we're done on this live stream here shortly, you can read my story I just wrote about, because I asked Shane Beamer tonight about how this day will, with Game Day coming and stuff, will impact recruiting, and it's going to be huge, he said. So I'll leave it at that, but go ahead and read the story if you want. Try to pull it up right here. I guess you guys can see that. That's the poster I had made out for Game Day. It says Mom. It's when I forget what game it was, but it was when Clemson, I don't even know. It was something Dabo said, and I said, Mom, South Carolina keeps on throwing bottles at us. I thought that was funny. I don't know. I was right in the front at Game Day. It was like a cold, rainy day, gray skies. But I remember my family sending me pictures of the broadcast, and my sign kept getting on there and stuff. So, definitely go to Game Day if you can. It'll be a lot of fun. I'm going to try to be there, not really as a going in the pit and stuff, because let me tell you, be prepared if you're going into the pit for Game Day, which is obviously right behind where the broadcast is set up with Corso, Herb Street, all those guys. Be prepared to stand in one place for like 5 to 6 hours. Me personally, I'll probably never do it again. I did it for SEC Nation when I was a student here, and thank you for the cool comment by William here. But what was I saying? Yeah, so with Game Day, just be prepared to stand in one place if you're in the pit for like 5-6 hours. Because you got to get there probably at like 5 a.m. Honestly, I think when I went, because I live in Fort Mill, or my parents do, when I was back in high school. So it was like a 30-minute ride to Charlotte or whatever. And I think me and my buddies, we went when we were in high school, got there maybe around like 5:30 in the morning, and people were already in line and stuff. I think people were waiting overnight in Charlotte, and so get there early if you can. I'm not sure what time Gamecock Park will be open yet. Once we get more info, like I said, we'll have that on GamecockCentral.com for you guys to check out, and we'll update it on that. But whatever time it opens, whatever time Gamecock Park opens, I would suggest just getting there as early as you can. And you have to wait a few hours. You have to wait a few hours. Bring water. Do what you got to do. And, be prepared to stand for a while, and your legs are going to be hurting after. So 17-year-old me, my legs were killing me after going to game day for so long. And you're going to have to go stand up at a game, right afterwards. So be there, have fun if you're going. And do you see me there? If I'm there, hanging out for a little bit before the game starts, come say hi if you recognize my face. And let's talk some Gamecocks, because it's going to be a really fun day on Saturday. And Mark Powell says, "What's up, brother?" Thumbs up, brother. I was in my sketch mode for a second there. Says, "Thumbs up, brother. Thank you for your content. I wish we had the old version of deciding game times, because USC versus LSU would most definitely be a night game. Unfortunately, it's all about the bread for TV." Totally agree. With this not being a night game, it's not even the fact that it's not a night game. It's a noon game, which I think is kind of ridiculous. I was watching one of the games yesterday, and I see for an advertisement, it was Tennessee, NC State I was watching. There's an advertisement for the 3:30 game next week. It's A&M, Florida, in the Swamp. That right there should be the noon game. Easy. If they could flip spots, that ABC should do it. But that's not going to happen. So noon kick. It's unfortunate, but it is what it is. I do wonder who the guest picker is going to be. And Aaron brings up a good point. I hope they get Trick Williams as the guest picker. That's actually a really good idea, because I've seen a lot of people say, Darius Rucker's the obvious choice. And you got Dawn Staley, obviously. And I think if I had to make a bet right now on who I think is going to be the guest picker on Saturday, I think Dawn's probably the best choice, because obviously she's the most popular person in Columbia right now from a USC perspective. And obviously Darius has done game day picks multiple times. People forget he did it last year when South Carolina was on game day in Charlotte against UNC. He was the guest picker, and he did it when South Carolina got on game day, like however many years ago. And it'd be crazy if they brought someone back. Like, imagine Kenny Chesney comes here and does game day picks again. What is his association with game day? It's like, what is his connection? It's crazy. So Trick Williams, that's a name I haven't seen popped up yet. That would be cool. I don't know. I don't know who else they could really get. I'm not aware, of super famous alumni that go here, or that did go here. Darius Rucker went here, never graduated from here. And then obviously Dawn Staley's the women's basketball coach here. Steve Spurrier would be a good option too. Lance Player says, I agree. That would also be a pretty cool option. But we're going to have to see what happens. George Rogers is another good one. I just wonder, Lee Corso, bless his heart. It's tough watching him on stage at this age, 89 years old, I think, or he might have just turned 90. But, it's tough watching that guy on stage. George obviously is much younger, but I wonder, I don't know how it would go. I think Dawn's the best choice. She's obviously a great personality and would be a lot of fun. And I think it's long overdue that she gets on. But Steve Spurrier, that's another cool option. Jay Diz says, shirtless John Garcia. Oh, my gosh. If this were, you know what? I wonder if Pat McAfee is going to have his show on, I think it's on Fridays usually on ESPN. Live from whatever campus they're at, because I was watching when he was in Morgantown for the season opener. I think Garcia, if Garcia's in town, imagine him on the Pat McAfee show. That would be sick. That'd be fun to watch. Because those two guys, I don't know if they've ever met before, but if Pat needs someone to get on there, Steven Garcia is probably the right guy. Clowney would also be a good choice, but it's NFL season, so Panthers, despite how awful they look today from the box score, Panthers probably they're going to have a game next week, so that will not be happening. But yeah, agree with Dawn, and I think Dawn will probably be the guest picker, but we're going to have to see. Either way, we'll have updates throughout the week, and last comment I'm probably going to try to read here is Jada says BYOB. It's not for the the bring your own whatever. You know what? Leave it up to you with what the B will stand for. Bring your own batteries, Gamecocks. Agreed. Bring your own batteries because it's going to be a long day. If it's hot, especially, haven't checked the weather yet, but if it's hot, it is going to be a long, long day, and it's a noon kick. So hope to see all of you at Williams-Brice Stadium for not just college game day from 9 to noon, but South Carolina versus LSU, which is going to be a very, once again, just like Kentucky this past week, it's going to be a huge game, a lot at stake for both teams. LSU obviously has the loss to the other USC on the other side of the country, and that was in the season opener out in Vegas. And LSU, they can't afford to lose a game here because I think if they do, not saying their playoff hopes are over, but like it feels like, I mean, unless they win the conference championship, I don't see them getting in if they lose this game, but who knows? We're going to have to see. So that's going to do it for this week's episode of GC Live Sunday Reset with yours truly. If you're not already, go ahead and subscribe to GamecockCentral.com. Go ahead and like this video. Give it a thumbs up, whatever you have to do. Appreciate you guys all tuning in. We're going to be back next week, hopefully sometime probably during the day. I apologize that this episode takes place at night. Moving forward, I'm trying to do these whenever I'm not on the road, basically. I'm going to try to do these during the day because I think that's a good time to get my thoughts as fresh as I can. But after a day of driving, it's tough because, obviously this is probably the best time for me to do it. So for home games, you could probably count on me doing GC Live Sunday Reset during the day. But if it is a game where I'm traveling or whatever, or I'm, flying back from Oklahoma or driving back from Tuscaloosa in a few weeks, you could probably count on Sunday Reset being at night after teleconferences and stuff. And I appreciate the nice comment, William. Great show, Jack. Thank you so much. I appreciate all you guys tuning in. Again, South Carolina is back at home on Saturday against LSU for college game day for the first time in 10 years. It's going to be awesome. It's going to be a great time, and hopefully all of you guys are there, and I hope to see some of y'all there. So be sure to stay locked into GamecockCentral.com for all coverage throughout the week. We're going to have stories still going on tonight, tomorrow. The rest of the week, we'll have updates from press conferences, staff picks, and then Saturday, the big day. Get ready for it. Get ready for college game day, and get ready for, if South Carolina wins, 3-0. When's the last time that's happened? I believe it's 2012 is the last time they started a season out 3-0. So be sure to stay locked into GamecockCentral.com. Like I said, have a great rest of your night. And, I will see you guys on the next episode next Sunday.